Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting. It's an opportunity for me to meet with the residents on Biscayne to talk about, I guess next to COVID, this is the number one thing that has to be addressed from a sort of government perspective, right? And in terms of speeding and racing on your street. I see Rihanna who's joining us as well. Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good to see you. Very well, thank you. You know, this is a serious issue, and it's an issue that is permeating throughout the city for a number of reasons, actually. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have a safe community to ensure the safety of our families and just in general, right? In terms of the concerns that we have. I know that this goes back for some time. I was just saying hello to Rihanna. Rihanna and I and others, members of the community, and Rihanna and her family were sort of the folks who drove, I think it was 2018, going back, got lots of signatures from members in the community, particularly on the street, around speeding and so on. And that has continued. We have put in a variety of different efforts and measures to try to deal with this issue. And of course, it hasn't gone away. Biscayne has presented a great opportunity for people just to cut in between Victoria Park and Pharmacy. And your street was redone and it looks immaculate. It is such a clear area for people to speed, and they do. And this is part of the reason why we are having this meeting this evening. And I want to thank Kareem and others, and Rihanna certainly going way back. We've been trying to deal with the issue of speeding on Biscayne and so on. I have parked on your street in my car, and I've seen people doing the things that you are concerned with. I parked on the side street as well, Shangari particularly, from people coming in. And then, of course, on Chenian Boulevard as well. I've seen it. So I've seen it from all the different perspectives. So it is a fact as to your concerns and complaints, so that it's not a question of whether or not we have to determine whether or not people are speeding and creating an unsafe condition for your street and the community as a whole. So the question is, how do we deal with it going forward? And so before I begin, though, I think I'd like to, as Kareem has been the latest person who has come forward to talk to me about this and has raised a concern on behalf of members of the community, I'd just like to maybe, Kareem, just to have you maybe just do a couple of minutes, just an overview. I've set the table somewhat, but if you could do it from your street perspective and your community perspective, because you have been sort of the current leader on this in terms of bringing this particular matter to my attention. There are others as well. And Rihanna, I'm going to basically come back to you because we're sort of going back to the future, so to speak, in terms of all the work that you did when we were working on this. I think it's around 2018. And so Kareem, let me give you the floor and we'll take a few minutes. But before I do that, just want to say that this meeting, we're recording the meeting so that, and I will have the information. I have staff that are with me as well on the call. And we have brought in one of our technical expert, our traffic expert, Sean Dillon is with us this evening. And I will invite him to speak a little bit later. He is actually the manager of traffic operations in the East area. He also covers East York as well. And so he is a Scarborough. He's been working with the city for about 25 years. And so he is quite knowledgeable. And so, Sean, what I'd like you to do is later on, we'll have you maybe just do a quick overview. You're quite familiar with the issue and so on. So, Kareem, I'm going to turn it over to you for a couple of minutes and maybe you can just give an update. I know that most people are aware of the issue and the situation. That's why you're on the call. But just from your perspective, and thank you very much for, again, bringing this matter forward.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. I moved in actually the day that I had received that petition back in 2018 and really thought, you know, how bad can it be? And then as I started to live here, I'm retired now, so I'm home every day, so I'm a firsthand witness to, the speeding is one thing. I know that being on a street like this, you have to expect, traffic or a bit of noise, but it's the speed that people go by all day long, and even in the evenings, because you can hear the cars accelerating. I'm closer to pharmacy, so I'll be sitting in the TV room and I can hear an engine start roaring. I think, oh, any second it'll rush by the house, and it does. So it's basically, it's just not, well, not even it's a safety issue too, because we don't have sidewalks, so we all walk dogs. Just since I've been here in the 4 houses around me, there's been 4 babies that have been born, so there's children in the neighborhood now, much more than before. And it's basically just an issue of people just have to show some respect, because all these bad actors clearly don't live in the area. I hate to say this, but I've actually followed a couple of vehicles, 2 that were honking at me as I slowed down to get in my own driveway. And I'm thinking, why would you ever be an issue to traffic because you're slowing down to get in your own driveway? And they weren't from the neighborhood. It's just people, like you said, taking shortcuts. So I think, like everybody, it's just been noticed that speed is an issue round the clock. Rude actors, so to speak, people who are, I've seen people passing each other on Biscayne, which is ridiculous. And it's safety. So we would just want to find a way to slow these people down. Clearly, people have to drive on Biscayne, and that's not going to change, but just be a bit more respectful, safe, and slow down. And we want to live safely and be able to, walk on our streets and walk our dogs, and not be worried who's going to rush up behind you. And I have a camera in the front of the house. I've got hundreds of clips of cars, which you can clearly see are going by at 60 and 70 kilometers an hour. And it's just unacceptable. That's it in a nutshell for me. And I'm sure a lot of the neighbors feel the same way.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Rihanna, I'm going to turn over just to you, because you were very instrumental with respect to the 2018 efforts to address some of the very problems that Kareem has just mentioned. And I know, by the way, congratulations, you finished law school. Congratulations, you got married. So congratulations all around, and so on. So I know that you still care about the community. Your parents still live on the street. You're very connected to it, and so on. So just to reiterate some of the things that you did in 2018, and then we'll sort of get into the meat of the meeting and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2018, I grew up on Biscayne since I was born, so I've seen the issues with speeding, and I've always thought like nothing could be done about it. And my fiance was actually involved in a car accident, also trying to turn into our driveway. Like Kareem said, somebody was trying to pass him while he was turning into our driveway, which it's unbelievable that people are in that much of a rush, and they don't seem to recognize that it's a residential street, not just a through street. So I reached out to Councillor Thompson, and he kind of pointed me in the right direction. From there, we got a petition going, and I'm sure a lot of you remember me coming to your door, asking for your signature, and so many people were just absolutely thrilled about the idea of moving forward with having some sort of recognition on our street. We originally had all of those kids at play, slow down signs, which helped for a while. And I know speeding is a huge issue throughout Toronto, so those signs kind of dissipated as people took them and relocated them to their own streets. Being a temporary measure, that has come and gone. Now we have the speed limit that's posted, which is great. And yeah, I think there's also that flashing sign that tells you how fast you're going. I haven't been in Toronto much lately, but.
Yeah, the speed, we have those, right. All right, so anybody else wanted to comment before we got into the discussion with Sean as to what we could do? And Sean obviously will talk a little bit about Vision Zero and what we're doing there and how it potentially could affect your street and some of the potential solutions. Some of them may take a little bit more time than you're prepared for, but nonetheless, I think we'll walk through this process and then come up with a bit of a game plan in terms of what we are going to do. I know in addition to what we've also done, Rihanna, was that we also had police in on the street as well writing tickets and responding, and that's part of it. Regrettably, the police can't be there all the time, and we understand that. But I think as we move this meeting forward, there are some ideas that I have with respect to policing. We will perhaps look how we can continue to do more of that, in as much as they can't be there all the time, because I think that's probably part of the short-term solutions to get people to slow down, and some signage and so on. But I don't want to get ahead of Sean's comments to us and so on. So just before we go to Sean, I wondered whether or not anyone else wishes to add something new. If it's already been said, that's fine. But if you want to restate it as well, that's perfectly fine. I want to hear from you because we do want to provide a solution to addressing the issue around speeding and safety, as has been described by Karim and Rihanna as well. And I'm sure that all of you feel the same way. So I'll just open the floor up. If you want to speak, just unmute yourself. Marco, you want to go ahead? Please just unmute yourself and just go ahead.
Yes, my name is Marco, and this is my wife Noelle. We're closing up on, I think this is 7 years, or 7 or 8 years we've been living in this neighborhood. I think we're going on 8 now. We have 3 children under 10. We have a 10, a 7, and a 5-year-old. And I think when we first started 8 years ago, there obviously was some through traffic, but I would have to say, since the construction has been going on Eglinton, we've seen a lot more. And actually, to be honest with you, these last 2 years, we have not been safe with going walking on our street with the kids. Especially now with the pandemic, we like to go for walks or bike rides. It just hasn't been safe for them. It's way too chaotic on Biscayne. We try to get onto Shangarry or one of the other streets because they're not as busy. But my biggest concern is that at some point, and it's just a matter of when, there is going to be an accident, and whether it's going to be a pet or a person or a child, and it's going to be a sad outcome. And I think it's going to be something that I don't want it to get to. I know the rest of the neighborhood, the rest of the neighbors don't want to either. And we need to do something about it. We're just looking for some action on this so that we don't go down that road. I know most of us try to be careful being on that street. The other concern is just the speed. I mean, let's just say it's not even involving a person or a pet, but the speed that some of these guys are going through, just one wrong move, I don't know exactly that, someone pulling out of their driveway, which has happened to me multiple times with our SUV, they're going to lose control of that car and they're going to go into someone's house or someone's driveway. There's a guarantee that's going to happen to some of the speeds that we've seen, especially at night. We even see a little bit sometimes. Karim and I have gone through some clips where there's clearly just people racing through that street late at night. So I definitely hope we can come to something that would help us here. And yeah, just provide a bit more safety for us on Biscayne Boulevard.
That's absolutely fair. I'm just looking, I know some folks are using the raise hand feature, and thank you, Melanie. I'll come to you in a sec. So if you actually want to speak before we get to Sean and get into this, I will ask you just to raise your hands, and I will, if I don't see you, please just let me know. I'm just scrolling through to make sure I can get to everyone. I'm using an iPad. It's the screen's not the greatest. I'm actually speaking to you, by the way, from the City Hall office. Been here all day. We've just concluded our meeting at 5 o'clock this afternoon, and it's been a busy day. Not unusual as all the days are, but I'm really delighted that we could have this meeting with everyone. So, Melanie, over to you. You have your raised hands. Thank you. You're unmuted.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Rihanna. I do recall you coming to our door and asking for us to sign the petition. I really applaud your get up and go. Thank you so much for that. And I'd like to echo Marco's sentiment. In fact, there may be an incident that I'm about to describe that perhaps, Marco, it was at your house or in front of your house. I'm finding that the speed, it's not just the speed, but I think drivers are very aggressive on this street because they are trying to get around the construction on Eglinton. I reverse into my driveway because I don't feel safe reversing out of my driveway.
And when I go to reverse into my driveway, people will scoot around behind you, between you and your driveway. They don't pause and wait. And I think it may have been you, Marco. Somebody was coming out of their driveway and I was on Biscayne. I stopped to wait for them. Somebody came behind me, speeding around me, and they couldn't see the person in the doorway, see them. And it was very close to a big accident. So it's not just speed. There's very aggressive driving on this street, I think.
Thank you very much for that. I've just made note of that. I don't see any more raised hands. I'm just looking. Is there anyone else has any comments before we, sorry, Janet and Beaucamp and Wilson, go ahead. Janet, so just
Hi.
unmute, you're unmuted now.
Yeah, so both Darren and I, we live on Biscayne, but we're closer to pharmacy.
Okay,
And what we found is, yes, there's huge amounts of speeding, but there's a significant amount of people who are parking on the side of the road. So now people are speeding and weaving in and out because there is a significant amount of people parking. Now, when there's it kind of comes and goes with the amount of people who are parking, but I don't believe they're people who actually live in the neighborhood.
do you have any idea where those people are coming from to park? Because I know in the past, I've seen people who would go to the Ashtonby playing fields. They would park on your street and then cross at the lights and walk over. But I was there the other day and there were a number of cars parked closer to pharmacy. And it was sort of mid-afternoon.
Yeah.
There were no activities taking place at the Ashtonby playing fields, but there were at least four cars parked closer towards pharmacy.
And that's where we are, because then we can't, because when you try to back out of your driveway
Yeah.
and people speeding, you can't see anything.
Okay.
Or at least, like, I'm not very tall, so I'm struggling to get in and out of my own driveway when I've got two cars that are kind of, you know, between my driveway, my yard, and my neighbor's yard. So it's an added difficulty.
Okay, right. Okay, if there is nothing further to add, I just wanted now to turn to Sean Dillon, who I introduced earlier. Sean, you're aware of the situation here. You've heard some of the comments from the residents, and this has been an ongoing issue on Biscayne Boulevard. We know that this is an issue throughout the city, but I just want to focus specifically on Biscayne and just to talk about, we can talk a little bit about Vision Zero, talk about potentially what some of the solutions are, and what some of the challenges with respect to issues I know that's been raised. There are no sidewalks on Biscayne. First of all, before I go to, are people interested in having sidewalks? Okay, all right, I knew you were going to say that because generally that's what I'm finding where there are no sidewalks, problem. People say that they don't want them. Sorry, somebody commented? I didn't know.
It's Sean Dillon here and saying, yeah, I'd be very blunt, I always am, but you know, when people call in and are concerned about pedestrian safety on a street and then say that they don't want sidewalks, sidewalks are the best way to keep pedestrians safe on a street. So, we can make all the mitigations, all the signs, all the markings that we can. And it's when you're mixing vehicles and pedestrians on a street, that's not safe for pedestrians. So first and foremost, always, if you're concerned about pedestrian safety, the best thing that can be done is adding sidewalks to remove that conflict so that pedestrians are no longer sharing the space with those moving vehicles. Okay, so that's, I hear people don't want the sidewalks, they don't want their, parking interrupted, they don't want, there's a lot of different reasons why people don't want it, but it is absolutely far and above the best way to maintain the safest environment for pedestrians. Okay.
All right.
So I guess I'm struggling a little bit with this because the data that we collected back in 2018 after the petition, did not support the presence of a lot of high-speed vehicles. So the data collected, they were out there for 3 days, 24/7, counting the speed of every vehicle that traveled east or west on the street. And in the end, the 85th percentile speed, that's the speed at which 85% of vehicles were going at or below, was 50 kilometers per hour. And that was before the speed limit was changed. So that was when there was no speed limits posted, before it was reduced to 40. So, you know, not discounting what people are telling me that they're seeing out there now, but that's something that we would, you know, need to go out and do another study to see if we can find sort of quantifiable data that supports what you're all seeing. So that would be the sort of the first next step for us to do in looking at this and sort of evaluating how bad the problem is out there. So I heard Janet, I think it was, talking about you know, the concerns with parking. I was a bit surprised to hear that because often parking is something that helps with speeding. You know, the fact that, you know, when you get a road with no vehicles parked on it, it's a wide open space, and it just sort of calls out to go fast on. Whereas once you introduce parking, it narrows the road, reduces the sight distance that people can see, and typically has a calming effect on vehicle operating speeds. So,
Sean, can I just
yep.
interject there for a second?
Please.
Because I've actually seen that, and I know that to be true in the standard form of sort of using the other vehicles to slow other vehicles down. So residents on places like Lillian, Gooderham, and some of those places, that's what they do. But I've actually noticed on Biscayne, because it to my eyes, it seems wider than most of the roadways. It seems pretty wide. But what I've noticed is that residents don't appear to be parking on both sides of the roadway. And so it doesn't create, if you will, that sort of interference that I'm used to in certain areas where you've got cars parking on both sides. So in order for one vehicle to pass, because vehicles are parked on both sides, you have to slow down. What I've noticed on Biscayne, and residents, you can help me and explain if you've noticed this, there are certain areas where vehicles will park, and then there is still the ability for people to actually speed. And as it's been stated, people will go around the vehicles that are turning into driveway and then basically gun it. You're right that when a lot of the work was done in 2018, we didn't have the intensification of the Eglinton crosstown that we do now. And I know people will actually come through and cut through to avoid, sort of because they're feeling delayed and so on. And so that is a problem. But I'll let you continue on, but I just wanted to add that as a comment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, you know, on a street that has a sidewalk, that is absolutely something that we would be recommending, you know, to try and mitigate the speed, is staggering the parking. So you would have blocks of parking on the north side, and then a little gap, and then block of parking on the south side, all the way down the street. And this creates, you know, a really tight feeling street that you can't see very far on, and therefore, you know, we've seen dramatic reductions in operating speeds. I have real concerns with doing that on a street that has no sidewalks, because now those parked vehicles are obscuring drivers' view of pedestrians. So, you know, it's not a mitigation that we would recommend on a street that doesn't have sidewalks.
Okay, so let me just stop you there for a moment, please,
Sure.
Sean.
I'm gonna just grab a little bit of water.
Okay,
Be
good.
right back.
Melanie, I see you have your hand up. I don't know if it was from previous, but I see that. But let's have a discussion, folks, around this issue around sidewalks, and Sean has indicated the rationale for it and so on. But what I'd like to do is take a look in its entirety around what we can do for overall safety. I think we've talked about the fact that it's not just the speeding of vehicles going up and down the street, it's also the safety of members of the community and so on. We had a situation on Randstone Gardens, which is over by the Kennedy and Eglinton areas. A number of years ago, they had no sidewalks. So in the wintertime, people are walking on the street, and there had been a number of near misses and so on. The residents, for the most part, said, we don't want sidewalk and so on. But it became so evident that it was so dangerous. I literally had to go against the resident, put the sidewalks in. Since the sidewalks have been in, I can tell you some of the people who were upset with me at the time have now commended me to say, you know what, it was the right thing to do. We didn't like it for a variety of reasons and so on. I'm just going to put it out there for discussion, and I'll just leave it open, because this is an opportunity for us to have an honest discussion as members of the community and so on, to let me know what you want for us to potentially look at solutions. So I'm not married to any of it other than to simply say, I want to make sure that we can come up with some ideas that we can work with and we can move forward with. So I'll over to you. I think, Janet, you guys had a question, I believe. Oh, go ahead. I just unmute you there.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sorry. My name is Darren Wilson. I lived on Biscayne Boulevard happily for 14 years. Love living here. Great people. And you see, so I live on the south side of Biscayne, closest to pharmacy. And here's what I've observed. So I know the gentleman mentioned that the speeds weren't on average okay, around 50. Here's just my observation. So since the Costco and the Walmart went in, obviously traffic has increased. And here's what I see a lot of times. People leave the Costco, the Walmart, they're traveling north on Pharmacy. They want to hang a left onto Biscayne to go west over to Victoria Park. I get that. The street is narrower at this end. So as soon as and the thing is, traffic is just boogieing down Pharmacy. So as soon as they make that left, they hammer it. And I can hear them wind up. Now, luckily, where I'm only 3 houses from the end. So for me, it's not a big deal. But yeah, I've seen them, by the time they hit the middle of the street, they're flying. So, and I personally, since I've moved in here, I stopped driving into my driveway anymore. I always back in. And whenever I do back in, I always make sure I pull off to the side, have a quick look around, make sure nobody's coming, and then quickly reverse into my driveway. Because if I try to back out of my driveway, because when they hammer it, they are hammering it. And I know I gamble with my life if I try to back out, especially on a Saturday afternoon. Forget it. It's Biscayne is like the new 401. So
okay. Thank you very much for that. I have Dan on an iPhone. You have your hands raised. Dan, please, over to you. And thank you very much, Darren, for that.
You're welcome. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dan.
Yes, okay,
thank you.
Perfect. My name is Dan. I live here on Biscayne now 4 or 5 years this month. We have 2 young children, one that's about to turn 5 and one that's about to turn 3. There has been a couple incidents where, actually just happened last week also, where a car almost hit our son, where my wife actually had to grab him by the hoodie and pull him off the road. And also with the cars parking on the streets, we actually do that sometimes so we can try to slow down the traffic. But then we've found it that we have traffic services now giving parking tickets to our neighbors because we're not allowed to park on the street at all. But we do that just to basically slow down the traffic a little bit and so people don't speed. I've also contacted Toronto Police on many occasions, giving them license plate numbers. The only thing they respond back to me is all they can do is give them a notice. They promised us that they'll be on our street patrolling. We have not seen them patrolling at all.
Okay. All right. Thanks
I
very
think
much,
my wife
Dan.
probably wanted to say something too.
Okay, sure.
Hi there,
Oh.
Mr. Thompson. Sorry, we have the kids in the background, as Dan
That's no
said.
problem. That's no problem.
Yeah, so we do have 2 young kids.
Yes.
You know, my son's 2.5. My daughter is 4.5. There's been many incidents where my son was playing in the backyard and he ran through the driveway, and I had to kind of jump and run and go to the corner of the driveway so I can pull him from racing cars just speeding down our Biscayne. So it's happened in many occasions. We can't seem to freely walk on the road so we can take a walk because there's cars just not even paying attention to children walking on the street. It's a big concern. And we're fearing at this point that something tragic is going to happen to one of our kids on our street. And, you know, we just don't want the tragedy to happen, so everybody can see how this is affecting our community. You know, our solution, what I was thinking the best solution would be is not sidewalks, but in fact, maybe, you know, controlling the traffic and the speed by having some speed bumps in place. That's my solution to the problem. Now, I'm not sure if everybody agrees with that, but we just need to slow down the speeding. Okay.
Oh, sorry. And one more thing. Also, it was great for us because on our side of the street, we used to be able to go through the backyard into the hydro field. But unfortunately, that stopped now because the growing, whatever they're doing back there now these days. But again, we do need to try to control something on the street. And we do need to have the Toronto police out here more often patrolling it as well.
Okay.
To be able to give these guys tickets, to hurt them in the pocket where it hurts them more.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you. I've made note of that. But I just want to reiterate what I'm hearing from folks is that in as much as you're concerned about the safety and you're concerned about the issue around speeding and again, safety, sidewalk is not something that you want. Is that unanimous amongst everybody? Is anybody in support of sidewalks? Okay, I'm just looking at the screen to see, and if you are, because I really think everyone needs to speak. Okay.
So
Ravi, I thought, Ravi, I'm going to come to you next.
Councillor, let me just interject there for a second.
Sure.
So I need to let everybody know that speed humps is not a possibility on a street that does not have sidewalks. So council approved policy does not allow for the installation of speed humps unless there's at least one sidewalk on the street. And the primary reason for that is, if any of you have driven on a street with speed humps, the tendency of drivers who want to minimize the impact of the speed hump is to shift to the right to try and only have one set of wheels go over the speed hump. And that moves those vehicles right into the path of where pedestrians are walking. So again, speed humps, you know, are good at controlling speed, but on a street where we're mixing pedestrians and vehicles in the same space, we cannot install them because it actually decreases the safety for those pedestrians. So unfortunately, it's not an option unless sidewalks are first installed.
Okay, I think that's helpful with the clarity. I'm going to go to Ravi next, and then I will go to no, I'll come back to you, Marco, in a moment. Okay. I'll come back to you. Ravi, you're next, please.
Hi, I'm not going to take up too much time. I actually don't live on Biscayne. I live off of Wexford, but I did drive down Biscayne the other day to take a look at the street. And yeah, it's wide open. You can see Victoria Park or Pharmacy from either end, and it's just inviting to open up the pedal and go. The same thing happens on Surrey. The same thing happens on Wexford Boulevard. I think there is an aggressive driving issue in the area. So yes, I just wanted to reiterate that point.
Thanks very much for the comment. But I would just say to you, Ravi, to add to that, there's aggressive driving right across the city, not specifically just the area, just right across the city. Marco, I know you had a comment. I think, did you want to make a comment quickly on the sidewalk? And then I'm going to go, I'm just seeing all the persons I can see here. I'm going to go to Karim after that. So over to you, Marco. And okay, go ahead.
So just for clarification, Sean, based on what you're saying there, we'd have to have the full package if we want speed bumps. We'd have to be okay with the sidewalks before we get speed bumps. So I understand 100%. That makes sense to me. The only other thing I would add into that, Sean, given that you took this, you were able to compile data back in 2018, is maybe to run that. If that's maybe something very short term, because a lot's changed in the 2-3 years since the construction that's going on Eglinton, and I'm sure the data will show something different. So I'm sure that maybe isn't as, it will be a bit more cost efficient if we can get that rolled out. so that you can see the data for yourself, because I'm sure with the rest of the neighbors here, it's evident that it's picked up a lot. And a lot of it has to be with everything that's happening on Ashtonby. Everyone uses the back, obviously Ashtonby as the exit out of Walmart, out of Costco, out of all those places there. And that has increased that kind of traffic that comes through Biscayne.
Right.
Speed as well. We're getting a lot of courier services. A lot of the courier trucks come through here. A lot of the Walmart trucks. Karim and I have seen quite a few clips of all the couriers that are coming through, and they come in aggressive, right? They're trying to get to their delivery places. Obviously, pandemic has caused more couriers to be on our street. We just need to slow it down. So in terms of that, if the sidewalk is the first way to get to the speed bump, I think on this call, we all need to potentially really think about that and make a decision whether we want a sidewalk. Because given that if the data comes back that there is a problem with speeding, there is a problem with throughway, I mean, technically Michael could override if we all say no sidewalk, right? So let's just give that some thought, that if we want to get to the speed bump, we may need to look at a sidewalk. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you. Well, let's be very clear. It is not my intention to override you folks, because what I'd like to do is come up with a solution. So I'm going to go to Karim next, and I'm going to go to the couple on the iPhone after. I don't know your names at this point, but I'll get that shortly. So Karim, over to you, and then I'll go to the couple with the that's in the screen here. The lady with the red top, gentleman with the white shirt. A good-looking couple, by the way.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I just want to say that with respect to sidewalks, I'm not in favor of sidewalks simply because the volume of pedestrians on the street, I don't think warrants having all the upheaval of installing sidewalks, losing your property. I personally am being selfish. I have a 50-year-old northern catalpa on the front lawn, which would be in the way of a sidewalk if that's where the solution. I think the solution is you got to reach deeper into your toolbox and look for another alternative. If speed bumps aren't available because you have to have a sidewalk, and we as a small community don't want sidewalks, there's got to be other deterrents to speed, because the issue is speeding by bad individuals a few times a day, probably, a few times every hour, but it's just not consistent. And we're just waiting for that time when somebody's going to zip through, and they're doing it all the time, and they're going to hit one of us. And I don't think having a sidewalk is going to be the answer to that. I just think you need a deterrent. Don't speed on Biscayne. That's it.
Fair enough. I'm going to go to the couple, as I mentioned, and then to Melanie, and then to Rihanna. And then I'll come to you after Rihanna. Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi. Yes. Actually, we are Rihanna's parents. It's Linda and Hilal. Hi. How are you?
It's hard to see you guys. Hey, you both.
Hi. It's okay.
Hi, guys.
Yeah. I just had a quick question, because I think we had discussed last time we met with you about what are the issues with sidewalks, which I gather people don't want to lose things on their property. I'm assuming that's what is going to happen. Just one other quick thing is, towards pharmacy, is there enough room there to put in a traffic, like a small, I don't know what they call them, but a circle, like for cars to go around? Because it's a huge space where the street comes in onto Biscayne.
You mean a roundabout?
A roundabout. I don't know if that's effective. It's closer to pharmacy, but I don't know. I've been down a few streets off Bayview near Sunnybrook Hospital, and they've got one street that's full of nothing but those. And again, do you need a sidewalk if you put one in?
Yeah. That will be between Shanine on Biscayne.
Right.
Right? On Shanine and Biscayne, that will help reduce the speed for the people coming from that side, go either to Shanine or through to Biscayne.
But it's a huge space.
Like
there.
If you put two of them,
wait.
One on Shangri.
I was just going to say,
yeah, one on Shangri and one on Biscayne and Shanine.
Right.
And that will help reduce the speed.
All right. Well, why don't we invite a comment from Sean? Sean, a bit of a roundabout. I know that I think it's Broadway that you're talking about, from Bayview over to Yonge, going there. There's all these roundabouts that slows the traffic down.
Yeah, so we would have to have a closer look at it
Okay.
to see if there was room for that. You know, sort of my initial guess looking at it is probably not. That I don't think there probably is enough space to put something in the middle and still leave enough room for, you know, larger vehicles to be able to get through that. But it's something that, you know, if that's something that the community is interested in, we could certainly have a look at it.
Fair enough.
Again, you know, doing something like that, again, pushes traffic to the curb, which is where pedestrians are if there's no sidewalks. So yeah, the city council policy applies to all forms of traffic calming. So, you know, it's basically, we cannot proceed with any form of traffic calming without first installing sidewalks on at least one side of the street.
All right. Thank you very much for that comment. All right. So we were going over to Melanie, but you don't look like Melanie, and then Rihanna. Could you introduce yourself,
Yeah.
please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Melanie's husband, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Our vote is for sidewalks, both of us. If it means the difference between a kid, a dog, someone out for a run, someone with their groceries getting hit or not hit, for me, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to take to promote safety on the street. One question maybe for Sean. I don't know if people are concerned about, do we have an obligation? If we get sidewalks, do we have obligation in the winter to clear those sidewalks? I don't know if that's something that might be causing people to be hesitant about going with sidewalks, but that's something I'm interested in understanding.
So sidewalk maintenance isn't my expertise, but I believe there is mechanical sidewalk clearing in your area.
Yeah.
So a new sidewalk would be at sort of the standard width, and as such would be easily cleared by a street City of Toronto sidewalk plow.
So,
go ahead, Councillor.
yeah, I was just going to add, yeah. So we actually have sidewalk clearing in Scarborough, and it's, for the most part, it works. You know, there's the odd times when the grass is damaged, and if you had something closer to the sidewalk, because you realize it's about 3 feet in on either side, it's the city property as well. So yes, it is there. Some people are adverse to it because of the point you just raised, Steve, about not wanting to shovel the sidewalk. And Kareem was you know, was to the point. He has certain sort of ornaments and so on that's on his property that he doesn't want to touch, and it would create an impediment or an impact for him. And those are some of the concerns that we have. But I think we really have to think about this. Again, we've heard a lot of things, and I'm going to go through a bit of a run through and, you know, take this all back and take a look as to what are some of the potential things we can do to mitigate. I've heard the fact that you don't want the sidewalk, and Steve has just spoken in support based on the points that you made around safety and sort of, you know, at the risk of, do we really want to say no to something like a sidewalk? And I'm not suggesting that you do it. It'll be up to you, who are residents on the street and so on. But we'll come back to that a little bit later. But no, the sidewalk clearing would be done essentially by the machine that comes around. Generally, it comes around at the appropriate time, depending on how much snow is there. Rihanna.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back in and talk about whether or not residents wanted sidewalks or not. I know you kind of tabled that question earlier. I don't feel comfortable, and I'm not sure if other people are feeling the same way, answering that question until we have all of our options in front of us. Because again, like you said, it's just a weighing, like what are our options? What are the pros and cons of each? And I'm sure there are people who a sidewalk might be their last choice, but like that's the position I find that I would be in if I lived on Biscayne. And just because it's my last choice doesn't mean it's off the table if there's nothing else that's really practical.
Sure.
So the other thing that I wanted to comment was about sidewalks. I don't really understand exactly what the policy is. Are they always built on people's property? Like you said, Biscayne is a very wide street. I'm just wondering why it couldn't be built onto the roadway itself.
Sean, you want to take that?
Sure. So again, it's not on or on people's property. The first significant portion of your front lawn is actual municipal right of way. So on this street, the road is about 8.5 meters wide, and typically the right of way is either 18.5 or 20 meters. So fully half of the road's width, again, beyond the curb, is city property. And that's where the sidewalk would be placed. If we got into things like narrowing the road, you know, that's certainly a much more significant project. It would only be considered at a time when the road was being reconstructed, because along with moving the curbs to install the sidewalk, you'd have to remove the storm sewer and all the other underground utilities that are affected. So, you know, it moves from being, if I had to guess, I'd say, you know, it's a couple $100,000 to install sidewalk on your street. It's probably a few $1 million to narrow the road and install sidewalk.
And in fact, Sean, we had the roadway. I don't actually have the date in on top of mind, but the street was redone not too long ago, so I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm going to go to Gina, and then sorry, Dan. I had said I'd come to you, and then to Gina next. So Dan, over to you, and then Gina.
Okay, hi there. So in regards to sidewalks and stuff like that, can the city look into maybe putting the Speed Force radar where they get automatically tickets, or even no left hand and no right hand turns signs between certain hours during dinner time where the kids play or they walk, as I've seen on many streets also? And in regards to sidewalks, what side of the street were you looking to place those on? Are they on both sides of the streets, or the one side?
It would be the south side, because they could make it straight and unobstructed, right?
All right, so
so again,
you.
we haven't looked at that whatsoever. Again, this is just the sort of the first meeting. So there's been no work to look at, you know, what side would be better. But that's something that would be sort of a next step. In terms of the automated enforcement, at this time, the province has only allowed automated enforcement in school zones.
School zone, yeah.
So we are not allowed to use that tool anywhere else. We're hopeful that over time, the province will lift that restriction and allow broader use. But at this point, it can only be used within 150 meters of the frontage of a school.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to Gina, Gina's cell phone. Gina?
You didn't put your hand down.
Hi there, Mr. Thompson. Okay, so I understand that you have to build sidewalks before we get to the speed bumps. My concern is I have young children right now. So yes. What is the timeline? How long is it going to take to construct sidewalks and then to actually build speed bumps? My kids are young right now, so we're looking for some fast action right now where they're going to be safe right now, not later on. So that's my concern, and just wanted to leave the floor open to you just to get your input on the timeline.
Sure. Thank you very much for that. And as you know, it's been stated that, as Sean pointed out, this is a first opportunity at an ongoing matter, because we go back to 2018 and so on, where we started to look at this, and we had put some measures in place, which is more focusing on you know, the police, speed enforcement, the speed watch, the signage and so on. And of course, we're learning that that doesn't work at this point. What I will simply say to you, Gina, is that, and part of the exercise of this meeting is to hear from everybody. Dan has just talked about turn restrictions and times associated with that. We talked about sidewalks and so on. It's part of a process that we actually have to look at, and then would have to come back to residents with respect to some short-term solutions, because I think it's immediate that we have some short-term solutions. And I think part of that, again, as I said earlier, I want to talk with the police and to get some additional enforcement going, so people understand that, that this street is not abandoned by the police, and they are actually monitoring it, and the word will get out and people will modify their behavior somewhat. I can simply say to you that I can't say exactly how long it would take to put the sidewalks in and associated with the speed bumps. I've had very few sidewalks that sort of took that we put in. We put in a few in my time here that sort of followed a natural timeline. It's a process that we get through. So I can't say that. I have not had to date one installation of speed hump in the community. We are working on our very first one on Bertrand Avenue. That's between Birchmount and Kennedy Road. Staff are doing the polling now. We have given the green light for that. And part of that reason is that people are speeding, and both side of that area, that street, Bertrand, has sidewalks, and they're actually, the work has just started, and so that will happen soon. That'll be the first one. This potentially could be the second one, but of course you heard from Sean, unless we have a sidewalk, there's no way that we would have speed bumps or speed humps in. But we've learned from the residents so far from this meeting about a number of things that we should consider. And I think that, as Karim pointed out, said, look in your toolbox. What are additional tools? We are actually in the toolbox, quite frankly, and we're putting forward some of those ideas. What we're going to do after this meeting is to go back with staff and take a further look at what we could do to, again, address some of the short-term issues, medium terms, and the long-term. And we would want to come back to you to let you know what we're doing. And that coming back to you could just simply be a quick flyer that I can drop in your mailbox just to tell you what we're starting to do. But I'm certainly open to looking at everything, but we wanted certainly to hear from everyone because you live there, you experience it on a day-by-day basis. I come periodically and I park my car and I see it, but that's not the real experience. It's just to validate what you are talking about. Because you live there, you see and hear and experience it all the time. So it's not that I can't give you an actual date and timeline. We'd have to work through and keep you apprised of that. So I'm gonna go back to the iPhone, Rihanna's parents, and go back to you folks.
Just
Yes?
one further,
Sorry, Sean,
just a quick addition to that. That if the community did decide they wanted to proceed with sidewalks, we would look to get the speed humps approved at the same time, so that the approval for the speed humps was done in advance of the sidewalks, and that way the installation of the speed humps could occur immediately following the sidewalk installation.
Yeah. Okay. Brianna's parents, and then I'll go to John Lamb.
Hi, just a quick question back to the sidewalks. It seems to be where we might end up. Do you have to go to the residents and get a certain percent that agree to it, or does it? And also, what is the actual physical? How far in does it come, and what if, as some of our neighbors have big trees or gardens, and what happens to those structures that are in the way of the sidewalk? And which
Sean,
is like,
so what I would expect on a street like this, and again, this is not my expertise. I'm not a road designer from a sidewalks point of view, but from my experience, I would expect, based on the mature trees that are present on the street, that they would be looking at sort of the lowest impact type of sidewalk that we have, which is one that is what they call monolithic to the curb. So it would be installed directly behind the curb with no gap between the curb and the sidewalk. And that takes up the very least space. And so, you'll be looking at, our current sidewalk minimum on a local road is 1.8 meters. So about 6 feet. So that would be the space that it would take up, would be sort of the first 6 feet from the curb into the front lawns. And so looking, in most cases, I think that area is fairly free of obstructions. I'm just, looking through Google to see, most of the trees are set further back than that.
Yep.
There are some young trees, I think, towards the pharmacy end that might be planted closer than that. But for the most part, most of the mature trees are set far enough back that they could probably be installed without disturbing those.
Yeah, and so I think what Sean is saying, and that is potentially a solution, but as we said, we would take that back. So in essence, you have, I would just talk I'm just trying to think of where I've seen it, where you probably would see. In our community, there are none of those type of sort of hybrid or just a more smaller, areas where we put a walk area. I mean, I haven't used the term sidewalk associated with them. It is just, as Sean has pointed out, from the curb, if you will, you have, if you will, it's sort of like the tiles, or if your backyard, you put the slab down and you're able to walk. It's a little bit different from the standard sidewalk. And I don't believe that, Sean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that the feature in terms of digging and so on is quite the same. Is it the same, or is it a little bit different in terms of this sort of intrusion that you would have?
It's certainly a little bit less intrusive, because you're not, obviously if you're creating a gap between the curb and the sidewalk, then that's pushing the sidewalk that much further into the front lawn. You're also needing to put forming up on both sides of the sidewalk. So with this, it gets poured against the curb. The curb becomes the formwork for the roadside, and so you've just got a little bit of forming on the house side. So yes, it's certainly far less disruptive and takes up less space than what you would traditionally see as sidewalks in your area.
Right, and we could, as part of coming back to you, we could have a bit of a plan that show you what that would look like, and so that you could look at it and determine whether or not this is something that is possible, something that you like. Because first and foremost, we have to be mindful of the safety of the residents on the street. That's the first thing. The speeding is an issue that impacts safety, of course, but we also would want to see what we could do to provide a safe place for you to walk without actually having to walk on the street itself. It doesn't mean that we're not going to address the issue around speeding and the aggressive nature and so on and so forth. For me, the first response would be, what are the actions that I could take to ensure the safety of our residents so that they are not necessarily walking on the street because that's the only option that's available. John, I'll come to you, and I know that we're fast approaching 7 o'clock. We'll probably run a few minutes over, and I'm prepared to do that. But John, I'll come to you, and then we will maybe just do a bit of a sidewalk. I just saw somebody put something up about decreasing the value of the property, your property value. I'm not aware of any evidence that that is the case with respect to sidewalk, but we can validate for you. I think, Janet, that maybe come from you, but I'm not aware of that at all. But John, I'll come back to you because these are all the types of information we can provide you with later. John, come to you, John Lamb.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Thompson. So if you drive around the downtown Toronto, you know how the bike lane being constructed on the Richmond Street? It is on the road, but it separates the traffic with the planters boxes. Is it possible that we have a sidewalk, but it is on the street, and then it has the flower planters or some kind of a barrier? Then it won't block the drainage on the road, and then you create a walking space, safe space for the pedestrians. It can actually slow down the traffic with the speed hump, which is a hybrid solution in here. Is it doable? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I can't say that it is at this particular point in time, and I'll give Sean the floor, because I'm not aware of that being done on any of the streets in the area. But one of the things that I want to add, as and John, you've sort of caused my mind to turn to this, and Sean, it's a possibility, and I want to know what the residents will think. So if we were to look at putting bike lanes on Biscayne, we would have the ability to add additional features there, and I don't know exactly what that would be like, quite frankly. But I'm willing to think about a variety of different things outside the box. But that could be one way to sort of narrow the road a bit and to address the issue around speeding. It doesn't mean that we can't add the the feature that Sean has just spoke at, sort of a modified sidewalk. But I'm just putting things out there. I'm not advocating that we put bike lanes there, but it's a possibility, and you can create a much safer environment, a barrier which prevents the vehicles from either going on the curb or whatever we use as a barrier. So there are opportunities, I think, that we need to look at. So I'm going to put that on the table. I don't know whether or not people would be supportive of any type of consideration like that. So I'm going to ask you, is that something that you'd like us to maybe look at as well? You can give me thumbs up or thumbs down if you'd like, because I just want to think outside the box, quite frankly. Sean, I'll come to you in a second.
I would just say before people vote on that, I would just suggest that the road is not actually wide enough to put bike lanes on both sides. So the road's 8.5 meters wide. Bike lanes need to be 1.8 meters wide times 2. So that's 3.6. So that leaves you with less than 5 meters for two-way traffic. So that's not enough. It has to be 6 meters to get fire trucks through. And so, yeah, there's not enough space on an 8.5 meter wide local road to put in cycling facilities.
Okay. Well, that's helpful, but as I said, we're thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and the same would be true of the other gentleman's suggestion of trying to place it on the road. Again, they're just, first of all, you would lose all parking on the street, and you'd have a road narrowed to less than 6 meters wide, which just wouldn't be acceptable from a maintenance and accessibility for emergency vehicles and garbage trucks and all of that.
Fair enough. And what about John's idea with respect to the features that they have on Richmond, the planters that they have on Richmond?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that those again take up too much space.
Okay, take up too much room. Right? Okay, fair enough. All right.
So if people were looking for examples of what the sidewalk would look like, I did just find one on Google. So Crichton at Pharmacy, on the south side of Crichton, just west of Pharmacy, there's a small section of that type of sidewalk that we're talking about here. So you can look at that for an example.
And that's very close to you folks, so you can take a look. Okay, we are coming to that point where I have to close the meeting. But what I'd like to do before I close, I just want to sort of just do a quick go around. We talked about a number of things already. We've talked about the speeding. We've talked about the issue in terms of how residents are getting around. They're walking on the road because you have no sidewalk. We talk about rude actors. We talk about the concern about safety, and we've talked about what we did some time ago with respect to the police slow down signs. Not safe to walk, ride, to walk your dog. People are racing, aggressive driving, parking on the roadway, and so on. We've talked about, we haven't really talked a lot about this, Sean, but I believe the speed limit there now is 40 kilometers. And I think we are getting to a point where we will reduce the residential streets over time to 30 kilometers, right? Correct. And I know that this is not part of the sort of first tranche of activity, but I am going to perhaps buck the system a bit and to try to advance that so as to get to 30 as quickly as we can. So that still doesn't mean that people will go 30. I think we all know that. Right now it's 40. People are not going for 40. They're going much faster than that. We talked a little bit about return restrictions at specific times of the days, and that's something that we would have to look at. Of course, that would impact you as well as residents on the street. You couldn't turn into your own street at certain times and so on. So that's something that you have to be mindful of. I'm particularly obviously acutely aware about as Dan has indicated and his wife, they've indicated they have 2 young children and there are other young children as well. So that's extremely important. We talked a little bit about roundabout, road design and so on, planter box, and Sean has addressed a few of those. These are just the notes that I've taken regarding this. I know that it's important for us to ensure that we have a safe environment for the community, and that's something that we want to work at. I will say, as we take this away, what I would like to leave you with this evening, as of tomorrow, I will be reaching out to the police to ask for some immediate response in terms of enforcement to start that as it relates to people speeding. That's something that I want to do right away. And we would want to, along with Sean and his team, to take a look as to what potential solutions we could have to present you with at the next time when we meet. I don't have a time for that particular meeting at this point. It will be as quickly as possible that we can come back to you to have some further discussions. We may drop, as I said, a leaflet in your mailbox to let you know what we're doing. And then at some point we could have, when there's a plan, as part of what I'd like to do is work with Sean and his team to come up with a plan to discuss with you at the next meeting. One of the things that came up with the chat was, I think it was about, and I think it was Janet was asking about when the Eglinton Crosstown is going to be completed. Was that what you're asking, Janet? Okay, yeah. So right now, I understand it's sort of 2022, maybe 2023, but 2022 is what we're looking at. So it's moving along, and we're hoping that it will be concluded rather on time. And so it is slated for that period, and there could be minor delays and so on. I'm hoping not, but that's kind of when it's slated. All right, so I've had a chance to hear from you as to your concerns, and I really appreciate the fact that we've had an opportunity to address this and to talk about what needs to happen. I can assure you that I will take all the necessary actions that we need in order to ensure that the community is safe, because that's the #1 priority of any elected official, to ensure the health and welfare and safety of members of the community. So that's what I want to work on and so on. And I will get back to you as quickly as possible. I know it's inherently unsafe as you've described it. So I will simply say to you, I know time is of the essence, but the first thing that I would like to do is to get some police action as quickly as possible on the street. And then we have a number of please slow down signs in the Scarborough office. We could bring those out. And so for residents who would like to have one, we could maybe just agree on a certain time that we'll come out and offer you one. We can put that up along the street if you'd like. I don't know how many we have, but we do have some. We can bring some out just as a reminder to drivers that we are aware as to that as an issue, and to bring that to their attention and so on. We haven't talked about going out as a community because we can't do that now to sort of hold signs up and encourage people to slow down because we're in a COVID period and so on. That's not what we can do. But so we are going to do some work, and I will definitely get back to you all as soon as possible. I will just ask if there's any closing comments, whether or not from Kareem, yourself, or Rihanna, or anyone else who wanted to add anything. Marco, from you, or anyone, just so that we can close. We're a bit over time, but I'll give you another couple of minutes. Okay. No one has any comments? I think everybody's fine. If everybody's fine, I see a big thumbs up.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Kareem, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to thank you for for hosting the meeting, and I guess as a community, this will get done by all of us sort of standing beside each other and agreeing to what has to be done. But my only fear is that we're getting to the busy traffic season now, which is obviously summer. And if you want, I've got tons of video clips that just show. You already know. You don't have to. I don't have to tell you. You already know.
I'm fully aware. Yeah, that's fine.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you for for speaking to us.
Right. I see Rihanna's parents have their hands up. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add in terms of closing.
No, I also just wanted to say thank you on behalf of Rihanna and her parents for the meeting. And there's one question that didn't get answered is, does the sidewalk issue, does it have to go to the residents or is it your decision? Whose decision?
Well, I'm going to make it. I wanted to make it your decision, quite frankly, as residents on the street. It really should be your decision as to whether or not you have them or not. I don't want it to be my decision and having to fight with you. I want it to be your decision.
Is there a certain percent though?
Sean, did you want to touch that?
So with counselor support, it is the authority is delegated to staff. So with the counselor support. So ultimately, counselor, it is your decision.
and I'm not running away from it because I know that, because as I told you before, the folks on Randstone, I really had to make the call for them because they couldn't do it themselves, and I did. But I will tell you now, when you go on that street, people are very happy because it's much safer. As we are working collectively together, I think I'd like to see that we, as members of the community, you specifically, arrive at a decision that's in your best interest, that works for you. And I know many of you personally, and so on. So it's really important for us to work together. So I would just leave it at that for now. We're going to go through a process and see what other types of remedies that we could actually put in place before we arrive at the sidewalk decision. But I would want you to keep that in mind, please. Okay?
Thank
you all very much. I encourage you all to stay safe and to stay well, and we'll talk again. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.